Because when men are understanding who they are, know their purpose, have a clear sense of identity, are able to heal from the past, have a friend to walk alongside them. Like you said, when those things are going on and a man is walking towards and in health, oh my goodness, there's nothing better for women. That's such a champion for them women.
Hey, welcome to Men of Iron podcast. My name is Christine Lehman, and you are, in fact, at the right podcast. Here at Men of Iron, we are committed to telling stories. And so this series that we are calling Her Story is just really what it's like for the women in, the men that we're impacting. What is it like for them? What is their story? Today we have an incredibly special guest with us. Heather Zeamer is joining us today. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you.
In case you don't know, Heather is the wife of our founder, Bryan Zeamer. So we are so excited to hear what your side of the story is. And so we're just going to get started. We're going to dive in. Heather is one of my dearest friends, so this is going to be fun. It's going to be just a conversation between two friends.
Great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks again for coming and taking time out of your day. We're just going to get started and ask you, a little bit about yourself. Like, tell us, who is Heather Zeamer?
Oh, my. Okay. So, as you know, my husband's Bryan, and we have 3 sons. Oftentimes I call them boys, but they're actually young men in their mid-20s. Kyle's our oldest, and then Zach, and then Connor. And we just had the most exciting family celebration, which was Kyle getting married. So shout out to my new daughter-in-law, Kara.
Yes, your girl.
Yeah, my girl, finally. So a little bit of my story.
Yeah.
I was raised, I've pretty much had my faith all of my life. My parents, they got pregnant with me before they were married. So they were quite young. But they did get married. The beginning years of their marriage was pretty tumultuous because they were young and didn't know a lot, and neither of them had faith. But we had a neighbor who lived just a few doors down, Mrs. Fry, and she took my mom under her wing and essentially mentored and coached her. It wasn't a buzzword back in the 70s, but eventually started taking her to church. And my mom was quickly, like, she accepted salvation and she dove into a life of faith. So as long as I can remember, we have, my faith has always been, I remember being 6 years old and being in the kids' little sanctuary and raising my hand for salvation. So that's been a blessing. My dad didn't come along right away. It took him a little more convincing, but eventually he did as well. And so honestly, coaching and mentoring probably made a difference for me from the time I was a little girl. So I know the power of it. And then Bryan and I met in high school, and he was my first love. He did not reciprocate. We dated for a little bit, and then he went on his way. But in college, he and my brother wrestled together. So we started seeing each other again, and our relationship really started then. And at the time, like, he had gone to church. But I don't think that he really had or understood what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus. Right. And I might have done what you call missionary dating. Any young women listening, I do not recommend it because it doesn't always work out. But at some point when we were in college, I just asked him, hey, what are your plans for your relationship with God, or how do you see that? Yeah. And he's a processor. To this day, he's a processor. So his answer was, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you on that.
Hold, please.
Yeah. What's that?
Hold, please.
Yeah, hold, please. That's literally what he said. And I was very confident. I think the Lord had just early on put him as my person. So he went on a missions trip to Hungary, not a missions trip, a wrestling trip to Hungary. And his coach at the time must have seen him, I believe he was just reading his Bible. He was researching my question. Okay. And that coach was able to lead him to the Lord while he was in Hungary. So again, a coach, a mentor, intercepting and having tremendous influence on us.
Okay, so Bryan comes home from Hungary. You obviously prayed him through that. Yeah. Can you just expand a little bit on kind of that next season of life for you, walking alongside him, and what that meant, for your family?
So yeah, he came back and he shared with me, hey, this is what happened. I was in Hungary, and I don't remember a lot of specifics, but just the way he's designed, he dove in,
Yeah.
and he was all in.
Yeah.
And he started reading his Bible, and he started just really digging into what faith looked like for him.
Yeah.
We started getting involved in a church together, and we were married a few years later,
Yeah.
and we opted for the life of chaos, which was have 3 sons in 4 years, I think, and or less than 5, I'll say that.
Yeah.
And family business and all the things. And so from the time of his salvation, actually even before his salvation, because he was a wrestler and an athlete,
Yeah.
he had always had coaches in his life.
Yeah.
And he had always had men who were speaking into him and guiding him, beginning with his dad. His dad, was the first of those, if you will. And so he had always had that. But once we became married and we're raising kids and we have the family business that he's involved in, and we're now involved in church.
Yeah.
And so he had a man that he asked this man in church, Bob, hey, would you mentor me? And he didn't even really know, I don't think,
what that is.
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
He can correct me if I'm wrong, Bryan, sorry on that, but I don't think he quite. And so what I remember of that relationship doing and that mentorship doing for him, and this was before Men of Iron was a thing, was Bob was so instrumental in showing Bryan how to balance life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just about being a dad or a husband or growing a business or your faith. It was how you balance all of those things and always putting God first. And Bob was very, very much like a tender-hearted person.
Yeah.
So he was able to guide and lead and mentor Bryan in a way that was, it changed his life.
Yeah.
And it made him see things. And I really think, although he had so many coaches and mentors and men in his life that were instrumental. Like he always says, God orders your steps.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
But that mentorship, I think probably, if you think about when Men of Iron was birthed in Bryan, it started toiling the soil, so that he was, when he saw it, it was just like he saw it because he saw how Bob taught him that balance. And, even now, having the core 5.
Yes.
It's all about the balance. Oh, you were? Oh, I'm sorry. And
no, I was just going to say, we talk about that at Men of Iron a lot, the idea of the core 5 and finding balance in your core 5.
Absolutely.
And I think even that piece you said about the mentorship and the leadership is so important. And it's interesting because he recognized those things, and now those are, the foundation and core of
I didn't even think about that till we were just talking.
Yeah.
Literally, I didn't think about the fact of that. So that's cool.
Yeah. So once Bryan kind of got those mentors in his life and started to really learn those leadership skills and balance and that kind of thing, what were the benefits of that? What did you see, as a wife, as walking alongside him in that?
I think the biggest thing that I saw when that balance was introduced to him and he was his, in my opinion, like incredible ability to be very present.
Yes.
At home.
Yeah.
Home was chaos, right? And he would work long days, and he was in the business, and he was just it was all the things coming at him all day long.
Yeah.
And somehow he was able to come home and play hide and seek in the dark and all the things that he and the boys did. He was, from the minute he walked in the door, most days. Okay, he's not perfect, like, right? We're not Superman.
Yeah.
But just how present he was with our family. Yeah. And how, I would say that was the biggest benefit that I saw to that life of balance, was the presence with his, particularly his sons, with me too. But I needed him to be with them at the end of my day. So I would say that. And then I think it also, that idea of balance for him, and maybe this is for everybody, created a steadiness.
Yes.
So because all the eggs weren't in one basket, when that basket would get a little bit jumbled, well, if they're spread out, he was steady. He was steady when this thing was a little crazy or we had some hardship here. If you're spreading out, that if you're doing the core 5, let's call them,
Yeah,
and it's a balance.
Yeah.
One can get a little off balance, and then the others kind of right it up.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Men of Iron podcast. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Our Strong 27 mentorship experience was designed for every and any man who desires accountability, balance, and spiritual growth. We believe one-to-one mentorship is the most effective form of mentorship. Strong 27 requires a 12-month commitment with 2 meetings per month, providing you with the best opportunity to know God and know your purpose. Go to menofiron.org and start your mentorship journey today.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of, you walking alongside Bryan as a believer, and, how did that feel as far as just like supporting him or being an encouragement or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So when he came home from the leadership conference in 2005 and had been presented with this idea of holy discontent, and you can read the story on our site, but it's this place where you have something burning inside of you where you say, like, that's just not right.
Yeah.
And it's that intersection of place where God says, I agree, that's not right. Now let's go do something about it.
Yeah.
So when he heard that message, there was this just fire that was lit in him. But as I said, he's a processor.
Yeah.
So he did not know what to do with it. He wasn't quite sure. He couldn't quite name the thing, but he absolutely knew that God was calling him to something, and he knew that it was something big.
Yeah.
So when he came home and we were talking about it, he will often say, and I this makes me proud, or this makes me happy.
Yeah.
He will often say that I help bring clarity to things. Mm-hmm. So he's this big vision, big ideas. We're going to go change the world. Literally believes that, that's who he is.
Yeah.
I'm like way down here stuck in the details.
Yes.
I want to figure out, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we get
We
each
get
other
that.
with it. Yeah, for sure. And so I just helped bring some clarity to that from that moment. And I just said, well, it bothers you when men do not understand their purpose, their value, their gifts. They're not leading the way God designed them to.
Yeah.
You see the missed opportunity in that. Mm-hmm. And so I just really brought the clarity.
Yeah.
And then he just ran with it.
Yeah.
I mean, from day one, it was such a passion in him.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I was talking to the staff the other day, sharing kind of our story. And I said, I was reflecting before I came into this meeting, and that passion has never waned. It has never waned. It's the same today for him and for me as it was in that moment in our living room in 2005.
So what's it like from your perspective to kind of sort of, watch this little tiny idea that was, really just that? What's it like to kind of sort of walk alongside that and watch God do this, and know that, your husband was kind of sort of, the catalyst for all this starting and that kind of thing. So what's it feel like, to kind of walk alongside someone?
Because I'm not a big idea kind of person. Like I do dwell in the more small and simple, and I'm good. Like God made me that way.
Yep.
I don't apologize for that. It's been super fun and exciting, to watch the things that he says and the vision that God gave him, to literally watching it unfold.
Yeah.
He said from day one, before it was even a thing, I don't even know we probably hadn't named it at that point. He's like, this is going to be international. And I remember going, huh? Like, I was thinking of all the steps it would take to get there, and he was already way out.
Yeah.
So to watch that unfold has been exciting. It's been fun. But I think the overall feeling for me is it's been humbling.
Yeah.
Because not even a crier.
Yeah.
You watch how people come alongside this vision, especially early on when it was pretty unformed, it wasn't proven.
Yeah.
And to have our pastors at the time, and to have those initial 10 proteges and 10 mentors say, I see the vision of this.
Yeah.
I mean, the humbling part of that, it's astounding. And then all through the years, I've always been amazed when people tell their story or just share with us why they give to Men of Iron, why they support it, why they champion it. Because just to know that you have all those people surrounding this thing that God has called you to, very, very humbling.
Yeah. So your family obviously is super involved with, Men of Iron. And What are some exciting things that have come out of that you've gotten, to see or to witness, even like with your boys or young men? They're not boys.
Okay. We still call boys.
Your friends. I mean, your family members. Like, what's it like to kind of sort of, watch this program and see how it impacts those around you?
Yes. It's very, very personal. Mm-hmm. So we've had so many people that we know involved with Men of Iron, and then we've gotten to hear and know the stories. Within our community of friends and family, God has used Men of Iron to restore marriages, to bring health to men, to bring healing to the lives of these men who maybe suffered severe trauma or didn't have a good father figure to show them how to do the thing. Specifically for our sons, it's given them this community of men surrounding them. Our sons have been mentored, coached, spoken into, corrected by a vast network of these men that are closely connected to Men of Iron. At some point when you're raising your kids, I think this has been my experience, maybe not everybody's, but I remember reaching a point, especially with young men, where I felt, God's grace is good. He makes me enough. He makes us enough. But, it's so great to have an outside network that's speaking into their lives. Like they're knights of a round table, if you will. So
you said something earlier about holy discontent and kind of how Bryan came home with that idea. I'm kind of intrigued a little bit on, what that means to your family, or how you guys kind of flushed that idea out and what it meant in shaping Men of Iron.
Yeah, sure. I had never heard of it. And interestingly, I just went back probably about a year ago and pulled up that original message from the Willow Creek Leadership Conference. And it was very interesting to hear the direct message. And, I think that we're each created and born with the things within us, the greatness within us that God places in us, right? And we each have different purposes and gifts. And I would imagine that in most of us, I don't know this, I'm not saying this is biblical truth, but I would imagine in most of us, or all of us, there's this place or this thing where we can see whether it's injustice or we hurt for a certain group of people, or in a perfect world, we would just say like, that wouldn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's easy. We're busy the day to day. We don't really pause maybe enough to say, what is that thing in me? Or maybe it just organically grows, and maybe it's just an organic expression of our day-to-day life of I'm going to do something about this thing. And so Bryan had this like moment where he was able to figure that out. For some of us it may unfold very differently than that, but he knew what he knew about how he was created, and the thing that he saw that was not God's best for men, so he Men of Iron was this purpose to go after that. In subsequent years, we've walked through a journey where we've tried to identify our own values as a couple. What do we stand for? What's most important for us? What are the places where we want to give strategically, like the strategic generosity piece? And you have to know what you believe before you can really do those things wisely. So we went on this journey with some friends to hone in on our core values and things like that. What was really interesting and what came out of that was one of our core values so closely connects to Men of Iron that we both, we stood up in the conference room and we were like celebrating and high-fiving and yelling because it was such a moment of aha for us. And one of those core values that we came up with was, we believe that everybody has a backstory worthy of redemption. And the way that I think of that, like I'm a very pictures person, so I think about if you go to a movie and you're gonna watch this movie, and the director can take two approaches. He can put you right in present day, and the movie, the main character, is a terrible person. Terrible person. Does terrible things, whatever. Not a good person. If you go right into present day and you're watching this movie about someone who's very broken and lost, you're not going to root for them. You're going to kind of side with, he should get what he deserves, or whatever that is, right? However, if that director starts way back when that person is a child, and shows the trauma and the hurt, the disappointment, the fear that that little boy lived with.
Yeah.
The things that happened in life that brought him to this place of such brokenness. Well, then by the time you get to modern day, you might even be rooting for him.
Right.
You're going to have a whole lot of compassion.
Yeah.
And that is how God looks at each of us.
Yeah.
You know? And I think if we could just have that approach to people in general and say, God, how do you see them?
Yeah.
I think we would treat people a whole lot differently, especially the broken ones. Now, I'm not saying I get it right all the time. There are people that push my buttons and annoy me. And that like, I'm human. I'm still working on it. But when you think about Men of Iron, and that we are, what we want to do is help these men redeem backstories that are broken, that are full of trauma, that are, maybe they just didn't have good role models. Maybe they just didn't know. Every single person has that backstory worthy of redemption.
And I think it's important too to meet them where they are. You know, so many times we hear these stories where, you know, these men were broken or they came in with this trauma, you know, that you're talking about and things, and just how God can completely redeem that and bring the people that are needed into their life at that time.
And with Men of Iron, I think there's a unique opportunity because some of those men that you're talking about maybe would never step foot in a church.
Right.
Maybe they have misconceptions or preconceived ideas. Maybe they don't understand it. Maybe they're fearful. They may never step into a church, but Men of Iron essentially brings the church, the big church, makes it accessible to them.
I think that's what excites me too, because there's lots of different programs to meet these guys where they are.
Absolutely.
And to speak what you said about not, you know, they're not ready for church yet, but they might be ready for a mentorship, or they might be ready for a friend to meet them for coffee.
That's exactly right.
And also it's so easy for women to sit and have these conversations and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. For guys, it's really not. So I think equipping men to know how to, you know, identify that in a young guy or even someone their age.
Absolutely.
I think that's so incredible. And that's what gets me excited about Men of Iron and being a part of it. You know, I think of my, you know, my boys and you know, the ages that they are and how important mentorship is and that kind of thing. So is that something that really excited you as, you know, over the years, just kind of watching this develop, this idea of mentorship and leadership and that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think, so I have 3 brothers.
Yes.
And then I have 3 sons. So I've been like entrenched in this world of men. And I find it, you know, I think God has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
That he would allow Bryan and I to walk into this thing that is for men and it's for coaching men. And, you know, I think it's important to understand too, I think culture has messaged greatly the fact that Men of Iron is our passion and heartbeat, and like we're so committed to seeing this thing be everything that God wants it to be, is zero about the fact that we don't believe in the importance and power of women.
Right.
It's actually the opposite. Because when men are understanding who they are, know their purpose, have a clear sense of identity, are able to heal from the past, have a friend to walk alongside them. Like you said, when those things are going on and a man is walking towards and in health, oh my goodness, there's nothing better for women. That's such a champion for then women.
Yeah. I think it's come up a couple times, this idea of the ripple effect. And it's something
I was thinking about that yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I'm really passionate about too. Because also I do think God does have a sense of humor because, you know, I'm a woman working in a man's
somehow you do it.
Organization.
Somehow you survive. Yes. Well, it's because the 3 brother thing or the brother thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I was well prepared.
Yes.
But yeah, this idea of the ripple effect. And I think it's something that I really started to just get excited about and really speak into this idea that when we do get it right, it is families that are impacted and it is women that are impacted.
Absolutely.
And daughters, which is exciting because I do have 2 girls.
That's right. So I was driving along Old Line Road yesterday and actually looking for buck to run in front of my vehicle because they've been, it's deer season here in Mannheim.
Yes.
Buck season. And I got this really clear picture of that very thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I thought, thinking about the fact that we're telling women's stories, that's different,
It
right?
is different.
That's a
It is
departure
very
from what
different.
we've done.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was, the way I saw it was, you see a lot with Men of Iron of the what we do and who we are.
Yes.
That's the vision.
Yep.
That does not change. We are here to change the culture one man at a time.
Correct.
And there's all kinds of ways that we do it, but the essential who we are and what we do never changes, hasn't from day one.
Right.
But the flip side of that record, if you will,
Yeah.
side B, but not like less important, it's not like
Yeah.
a B record, but the flip side of that record is who we impact and how we influence.
Yes.
And I feel like these stories that the women are telling, or just like you said, that's the thing that's constantly changing.
Correct.
So going back to that hunting, as I was driving along watching for a buck, if you think about a bullseye, with Men of Iron equipping and engaging these men and resourcing them and giving them someone to walk alongside them, that's like hitting the bullseye.
Yeah.
Okay, that man, it's the bullseye and it's the good. Each circle outside of that bullseye,
Yes.
It starts small. So if he's married, it's his wife.
Yeah.
It's his kids.
Yep.
It's his extended family, parents, grandparents, it's his close friends. It's his coworkers.
Yep.
Every single one of those circles is impacted by that bullseye,
Yes.
And so it's not an either or. It's not a men or a women or it's a both and.
Right.
Everybody wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me too, that's been super important. Kind of just being a part of this program is just watching how these stories unfold. And I think, that was the whole point of this podcast really, was to figure out, how does it impact women?
Well, and that was another thing that I was sharing with the staff the other day when we were so graciously invited into the meeting just to talk with them about kind of the history and the backstory of Men of Iron for those of them who might not have been familiar with it. And I said to them, what you guys need to know, or like Bryan's, so he has this men's thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's his passion and it's his heartbeat. But truth be told, he is so tenderhearted and turned towards women and children. And so even through the years, there have been, a few times at our dinners where the wives speak or they're in a video, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but like, if I turn to him, it's the tears. I mean, because he's, and I, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like, let's help the men so that the women and children can be protected, or the women and children can be treated the way they should be treated, or, however you want to word that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you most excited for? What are you excited for in terms of, Men of Iron and where it's going, and what gets you, pumped up to see happening?
That's a big question. And we literally just said that I don't think big.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'm going to do my best. That's okay. I am excited. I think I'm most excited to watch how God continues to impact families.
Yeah.
And that does not take away from, like, a man doesn't have to be married to impact his family. He has a mother and a father and sisters and brothers and nieces and nephews, and just the unit of family. I think, there's been somewhat of a departure from like the specialness of that, the sanctity of that, whatever you want to call that. And I really look forward to watching. I believe God's going to use Men of Iron to bring healing to the family. And when our families are strong, when we're not living in strife and jealousy, and we're not holding on to unforgiveness, and we're able to heal within the family unit, culture's better.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
This was fun. This is my first podcast.
Yeah.
With
Hey,
Chris.
if you can offer one last thing, any encouragement for women who are walking alongside husbands, boyfriends, family members, from your perspective, from your seat, seeing, the beginning of Men of Iron, where it's going. Do you have any encouragement for women who might be listening today?
Yeah. First of all, I would encourage anyone that's in a hard season, in a lonely season, in a season where it feels like, man, the whole world is Instagram happy and I'm struggling over here. Is that you are not alone. We all struggle. And I think the biggest tool that the enemy, the devil, uses when we're in those places is to convince us that we're the only ones.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like, that's a lie. It's a myth. You're not alone.
Yeah.
And to remember that you know, find a support system and lean into that. Secondly, we've talked a lot today about men and their purpose, and it's the premise of Men of Iron.
What we
is,
are. Yeah.
Yeah, helping men discover.
Yeah.
But women, each of you have a purpose as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, depending on different life seasons, we can get so busy that we kind of forget that. I know for me, being a mom when the boys were little, and like that was all consuming. And at some point I reached, when they were maybe teenagers, I started going, who am I without all that?
Yes.
And I had a little bit of a crisis where I didn't know what my purpose was.
Yeah.
But I dug in, and God gave me new and fresh purposes as I went out of motherhood. And I think it's really important to remember that whether you are a stay-at-home mom, a full-time student, whether you're in high school, whether you're an empty nester, whatever stage of life you're in as a woman, you do have purpose.
Yeah.
You do have a reason that God put you right here on earth this time.
Yeah.
And I think just again to reiterate where culture has really created this us versus them and women and men.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, you know, we can buy into that, and just to remember that we are together the perfect picture. We are in the Garden of Eden. That's how God created it. So just to keep that in mind, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
time to be with us today.
Yes.
We really
Thanks,
appreciate
guys.
it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on the Men of Iron podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. At Men of Iron, we exist to change a culture one man at a time, and we'd love to have you partner with us. So go to menofiron.org to see how you can get involved, or donate at menofiron.org/donate.